The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, which then consisted of 12 countries including Iran, 7 Arab countries, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, plus Venezuela, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Ecuador, had all been formed at a Baghdad conference on September 14, 1960. OPEC was organized to resist pressure by the Seven Sisters to reduce oil prices and payments to producing countries. At first, OPEC had operated as an informal bargaining unit for the sale of oil by resource-rich third world nations. OPEC confined its activities to gaining a larger share of the profits generated by the Western oil companies and greater control over the members' levels of production. As a result of this and other events in the early 1970s, it began to exert its economic and political strength. The major Western oil conglomerates, as well as the importing nations, suddenly face a unified bloc of exporters.
The OPEC oil embargo, which lasted from October 1973 to March 1974, posed a major threat to the U.S. economy. Moreover, the Nixon administration's efforts to address the effects of the embargo ultimately presented the United States with many foreign policy challenges. During the October 1973 Arab-Israeli War, the Arab members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries announced an embargo against the United States in response to the U.S. decision to resupply the Israeli military during the war. OPEC members also extended the embargo to other countries that supported Israel. The embargo both banned petroleum exports to the targeted nations and introduced cuts in oil production. Several years of negotiations between oil-producing nations and oil companies had already destabilized a decades-old system of oil pricing, and thus the OPEC embargo was particularly effective. Implementation of the embargo and the changing nature of oil contracts set off an upward spiral in oil prices that had global implications. The price of oil per barrel doubled, then quadrupled, leading to increased costs for consumers worldwide and to the potential for budgetary collapse in less stable economies. Since the embargo coincided with the devaluation of the dollar, a global recession appeared imminent. U.S. allies in Europe and Japan had stockpiled oil supplies and thus had a short-term cushion, but the longer-term possibility of high oil prices and recession created a strong rift within the Atlantic Alliance. European nations and Japan sought to disassociate themselves from the U.S. Middle East policy. The United States, which faced growing oil consumption and dwindling domestic reserves and was more reliant on imported oil than ever before, had to negotiate an end to the embargo from a weaker international position. To address these developments, the United States announced Project Independence to promote domestic energy independence. It also engaged in intensive diplomatic efforts among its allies, promoting a consumers' union that would provide strategic depth and a consumers' cartel to control oil pricing. Both of these efforts were only partially successful.